Hi, I'm Alex Newman, a correspondent for the New American Magazine, and today I want to talk to you about another really important topic, and that is the exploitation of some of the recent developments in our country in this long-standing effort to nationalize our police departments. And of course there's the gun control issue. So in recent weeks and in recent months we've seen escalating levels of tension and violence. This kind of culminated with the murder of 5 police officers in Dallas by a guy who, according to news reports, said he hated white people. And then we had in Baton Rouge, we had murder of 3 more police officers in an ambush type of thing. And you have similar developments across the country, albeit at a smaller scale. And unfortunately, what we've seen is the nation's establishment political leaders and a lot of the race hustlers, people like Al Sharpton, coming out and saying that the solution to this is to nationalize the police. So you had Obama promoting this, the recommendations of this task force that he created last year with an executive order, the White House Task Force on 21st Century Policing. And these recommendations, in a nutshell, were nationalizing the police. He said we need national standards and guidelines for how our police departments should run. And this has echoes of Common Core, right, where the Obama administration used bribes, and that's what they want to do here. Federal bribe money to kind of trick local and state law enforcement agencies into surrendering control to the White House. And that's an extremely dangerous idea for many reasons. We have Hillary Clinton promoting the exact same thing. She actually went on TV several times after these incidents and said that we need national guidelines for police and national standards for our local police departments. And of course you have race hustlers like Al Sharpton, who in 1992 said that it's time to start offing the pigs, right? They want to murder police officers. And he too has said that the Justice Department needs to take control of local police departments. But this is a really, really bad and a really dangerous and a really unconstitutional idea. So let's talk about each of these. First of all, it's a bad idea. Why? Well, if you have corruption in your local police department, which you may or may not have, you can address that rather easily. You go to your local government, your city councilor, your mayor, your county sheriff who's elected, or whatever the case may be, and you work those problems out in your community. If you need to, you can even get your neighbors involved. So that's a relatively simple matter. If you have corruption in your police and they're responding to White House directives, then what do? Are you going to call the White House and ask them to please sort out the corruption in your police department? It's not going to happen, right? You're going to be disenfranchised like never before. The problems that you believe you might have in your local police department are going to be magnified times a lot. And it's just an absolutely terrible idea. And this is just basic logic, right? Anybody should be able to see this, that if you think you have problems now, just wait until it's nationalized. And how often do you call your member of Congress? How often does your member of Congress respond when you write them a letter? So that's a big problem. Second of all, we have the Constitution. The Constitution does not authorize any meddling in our local law enforcement. Actually, law enforcement and police is a state and local function, or it's reserved to the people according to the Constitution. There is no federal law enforcement power to control our local police departments. It's non-existent, and therefore it is specifically reserved by the 10th Amendment to the states and to the people. So we don't want the federal government involved. It's unconstitutional for the federal government to be involved. And finally, it's very dangerous. Spend some time thinking about national police forces that you can think of. Maybe you're thinking of the KGB or the Gestapo or some of these other national police forces that have been used to oppress the citizenry. Now, that has happened throughout history, right? People who have sinister goals, people who want to be totalitarians, who want to exercise control over their fellow men, have this tendency to try to nationalize coercive power. So as long as we have local police departments accountable to our local communities, funded by our local taxes, it's very difficult for any kind of national despot or tyrant to come along and impose tyranny. And we saw an example of this recently as Obama and some of the Democrats in Congress were blabbering about more gun control and we need to get guns out of the hands of citizens and so on. And you had an uprising among local and state law enforcement across this country. You had sheriffs everywhere saying that's not going to happen in our county. We're not going to help with that. We're not going to allow that in our jurisdiction. We took an oath to the Constitution. There's no way you're confiscating weapons from our citizens. And that is a major check on the ambitions of any potential tyrant now or in the future, right? Even if you love Obama, who knows about the next president? Maybe you don't like Trump, or maybe you didn't like Bush, right? And maybe the next guy's going to be even worse. So this is always something we need to keep in mind. Our local police forces are a huge bulwark against any kind of tyranny or totalitarianism, and that's just one more reason why we need to fight to keep them independent and to keep them our local police departments. Then of course you have the gun control agenda. Right after each one of these shootings, you have Obama and Hillary Clinton and globalist members of the establishment rambling about that we need more gun control. Now that's totally silly, and the police understand that. Actually, if you look at the polls, some show that more than 90 police officers are strong supporters of the Second Amendment, and by far the overwhelming majority of police chiefs and sheriffs support our right to keep and bear arms. So that's good news, and that's as it should be. Police officers and sheriffs understand that they can't be everywhere all the time, and that armed citizens act as a deterrent for crime and for other mischief. So we need to resist the gun control. We need to resist the nationalization of our police departments, and one of the ways to do that is to support your local police and keep them independent. So if the federal government comes in with all this bribe money and they say, here, why don't you just take this grant and then submit to these federal regulations, you need to work with your police chief, you need to work with your city commission, with your county sheriff, with your county commission to say, no, we don't want your unconstitutional bribe money, and we don't want your unconstitutional and illegitimate guidelines. And even if the guidelines sound reasonable at first, there's that old camel's nose under the tent. We need to keep the federal government out of our local affairs. That's not a role or responsibility for the federal government, and we can do that by supporting our local police and keeping them independent. So check out the New American Magazine. We have all kinds of stories exposing the forces that are orchestrating a lot of this chaos. They like to use crises and exploit crises to further their agenda, but that's why people like Soros are pouring tens of millions of dollars into these astroturf groups in places like Ferguson to cause chaos. So we need to be aware of that. We need to educate ourselves, and we need to educate our local law enforcement officers and our local officials to make sure that we can protect our communities from this madness and from this lawlessness that's afflicting so many parts of the nation. Thank you for listening, and hope to see you soon.